everyone, just a heads up. There's some audio did not make it into the episode as it was lost during recording, and unfortunately we didn't realize until after. I do think there is enough to sink your teeth into here, so enjoy and go Jays go. I'm back with my battery mate, as always, Dustin, and we are going to have a review of the first 10 games and the first road trip of the season, Dustin, and few positives, some negatives, and lots of discussion points.
Yeah, some ups and downs here. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster. We had some good feelings, I think, after the Tampa series. Everybody looked good, and I'm not sure everybody looks good now.
I definitely think that the wheels, I don't think one wheel fell off. I think they all fell off on that trip to Houston. And of course, the first night, Ronald Blanco no hits the Jays. And, this can happen. And I generally wasn't too upset about it. But I think when you finish the series in 2 games, so game 1 and game 3, you have 1 hit. And you only win game number 2 because of 1 swing from Mr. Davis Schneider. There are a lot of question marks, and I've kind of been in the camp that the bottom half of this order is kind of the issue for this team, but the whole lineup is an issue.
Yeah, it seems like they slump together. Usually you would expect Springer and Bo are slumping, maybe Vladdy's hot with Kirk, and okay, they kind of carry the team for a couple games and then vice versa.
I did send you that foul territory, I think it was about a 15-minute segment, and they were talking about how bad the Jays have been to start the year. And, they have a couple former players on that show, and they both kind of seemed to wonder if these guys are actually talking to each other, and they don't really seem to make any adjustments. And I don't know, at bats with this team, I never do you ever get a sense of what's going to take place in this at bat? It was to me it almost seems like a complete dice roll every time any batter on this Jays team comes up.
Yeah, I think with some of the opposing batters, you just feel it. You feel like, oh, he's gonna do something here. I just never get that feeling with the Jays, and I used to get that, especially with Vladdy. 2021, a man on second and 1 out, and it's Vladdy up the plate. You're like, yes, all right, we're gonna score here, and I just don't get that sort of guaranteed feeling anymore.
No, I agree, and it's that thing you're talking about. It's it's palpable, right? When we're gonna talk about it in a little bit, but when Aaron Judge comes to the plate or Juan Soto, you kind of know what you're going to get from them. Juan Soto's going to take a lot of pitches, good chance of him walking. Aaron Judge might put the ball over the fence, right? You kind of know what you're going to get. And I don't know, it's I would say it's like flipping a coin, but there's 2 outcomes when you flip a coin. It's like a D&D die where, who knows what you're going to get. You might, there might be an ambush, but you might be on the other end of that ambush as well.
And it seems most often they're coming up with 1s and 2s here over this last stretch. It's unfortunate that they've all been clustered with either bad luck or poor approaches or whatever the case may be.
So in that Houston series, game 1 they lose 10-0. Game 2 they end up winning 2-1. And we should mention that Bo Bichette returned from his neck spasm injury in game number 2. I don't know if he's still suffering from that, because even though he's back playing, it's almost been like a hole in the lineup because he hasn't really done much either. But Davis Schneider does win that. Not a walk-off because, of course, they were away, but he hits a 2-run home run in the top of the 9th, and Josh Hader blows his save. Jay's going to win that game 2-1. Now, we should note, this game was kind of sandwiched by 2 pieces of shit, but the Jays did have 8 hits in this game, and I remember I was sitting there watching, and I was kind of just happy that that the fact that they could put that no-hitter behind them, but they just didn't seem to be able to put anything together, and it's kind of left me puzzled. But I do have some, it's early in the season, of course, but I do have some conclusions. I think I think this team is kind of showing itself a little bit on this road trip, and I think I have a pretty good feeling of what we're going to see this year. So moving on to the New York series, it was of course a day off, so I'm sure all the Jays players loved that after the turd that was the Houston series. But coming out in Friday, excuse, I was gonna say Friday night, Friday afternoon in New York, Yusei Kikuchi takes the mound, and he battled really hard. And you know what? In the end, he pitched really well, Dustin.
I think that, you say sort of really pitches well whenever he's in New York. I don't know what it is. He likes the stadium. He likes the kind of hitters that they are. Judge and even Stanton a little bit, and Juan Soto. They're looking for the fastball. They're looking for they're guessers a little bit, I think. And you say, he's just got good stuff, and he matches up well against New York. I know that he likes to go and throw a long toss, or throw the ball around in Central Park before games when he plays there. So I don't know. He's got the Yankees number, or he just likes pitching it under the big lights.
So his pitching line: 5 1/3 innings pitched, 7 strikeouts, 2 walks. He gave up 4 hits, and that was all over 96 pitches. I think another player that we need to mention, Ernie Clement. He had the big swing of the game with a solo home run, and really, he was the only real offense the Jays had to really offer, because they did go on to win this game 3-0, but the other two runs essentially were Yankees mistakes and pass. I believe were they pass balls or wild pitches.
I think there were wild pitches.
Jays going to win that game 3-0, and Ernie Clement, Dustin, we'd kind of been chatting a little bit and wondering if this guy is kind of a player that has to be in the lineup every game, and so far, based on how this team is performing, I would say yes, you need to find a place for him.
I think you got to play the hot hand, as they say. He started in both the next two games. It didn't really help all that much, except for, I guess, he contributed in game 2 on Saturday. But yeah, it's tough when you paying somebody like IKF, $7.5 million a year. It's almost like you're pot committed a little bit to try and play him, but then when you have somebody like Ernie Clement that comes up and he's showing you what he's got, and he's actually contributing and actually doing what we want these guys to do. I want to give Schneider a little bit of credit here on this first game. Yeah, I want to give him a little bit of credit. He pinch ran for Kirk in the ninth, which you could kind of think that's a risky play, right? You're up 1-0 in the ninth, and you're pinch running for the catcher with, a rookie catcher. If you don't score there, if you don't add on those 2 insurance runs, it's 1 run in the bottom of the ninth against a pretty strong lineup. Severin isn't exactly, used to that kind of spot. It's going to be a tough spot for him. So it could have been a bad choice from that perspective. But obviously, when you have a man in scoring position and you can have the opportunity to get those guys in, you take it, and it worked out well. And I think that was a pretty good choice. I think some people probably question that in the moment.
In situations like this, you absolutely must pinch run for Alejandro Kirk. Like, you have to. And the reason I say that is that this team is already, like, it's old and slow, right? So the Jays' problems are compounded by the fact that you have guys on the base pass that they can't take an extra base. On a single, they can't go first to third, right? So in this situation, when it happened, yes, I do think that John Schneider should get all the credit for this, because this is the right move in this scenario. And you know what? It paid off. Alejandro Kirk is not scoring on a pass ball, wild pitch, whatever. It's just not happening, right? And this is the right move. Yeah, it's just and so this is something that had to have happened, and I we can maybe have a discussion about John Schneider another day. But this is kind of I like John Schneider, right? Like I don't think he's a problem. Like to me he makes sensible decisions for the most part, and every now and then I think he might get caught up with the Blue Jays, because he's a Blue Jays guy, so I think he might get caught up with some of the organizational goals and directives. But it was 100% the right move. It paid off. And you know what? Do you really want to go to the bottom of the ninth against Aaron Judge and the Yankees with a one-run lead? And um, I think even the color commentator on the radio was even saying, "Oh, those flags are blowing out too. I'm not liking this, right?" And those insurance runs were vital.
Well, and that's why I bring it up, regarding Schneider, is that he has probably bought into the, as you say, the organizational strategy and what they're trying to do. He's bought into the analytics and that kind of thing. And what we saw in the playoffs last year, where they took out Barrios to put in Kikuchi, that was based on probably that analytics kind of situation versus what you're seeing in the moment. And I think John Schneider maybe falls victim to that a little bit, and that's probably a lot of the criticism that some of these players see in him. It's like you need to take into account that analytics, but also see what your eyes are seeing you, and be a little bit of in the moment, right? And I think that there, pinch running or pinch hitting, pinch running for Kirk in that moment is a little bit of that. I think it's an obvious move, but there you could kind of argue that Kirk's defense on the back half of the inning is also valuable, right? But that comes back to the whole point about playing Ernie Clement as well. He's not the guy that they signed to play third base. He started third base here today on Sunday's game, probably because he's earned it. And I think that buys a little bit of goodwill that John Schneider needs for this team to buy into his leadership and for them to be the kind of team that they need to be to get to the playoffs and to go further than they did last year.
I want to make a comment on John Schneider before we move on. But Ernie Clement, I just want to close this one off. Right now, as it stands, following Sunday's game, he has a 280 average, 749 OPS with 7 hits. 7 hits being second on the team, Dustin. So he seems to be swinging the bat reasonably well. And what position do you think you would try to get him in most times, or would you just keep moving him around? Is he this year's Whit Merrifield?
Yeah, I think a little bit of that. I think he's this year's Whit Merrifield. I mean, I'm going to try and put him in at third base, probably most often. It's tough because today he was in at third base, and Justin Turner was the one sitting. And it's like, well, is that what you want? I don't know. Maybe that's just a matchups thing or whatever the case may be. But I would, the way IKF's playing, I would put Clement in at third and set IKF. It may not, it may rub IKF the wrong way, but it is what it is. I mean, you just got to play the game, the guy that's going to get you the wins, get you the runs, that get you the wins, that carry this team. And if Ernie Clement cools off, then he sits, and it's just the way it is. And these guys have to sort of buy into that. And that's what I think that that's what I'm saying. John Schneider needs to do that a little bit more. His job is to put the guys on the field that are going to win the games, and then make the guys okay with that behind the scenes in the locker room. That's the job of a manager, is making sure the guys are bought into what you're doing and putting guys into position to succeed. And I think that's probably a little bit of his failing last year, and he needs to work on that and improve. And I'm seeing inklings of that. It's starting to look like that's what he's trying to do this year.
I definitely think that John Schneider is a little slow in kind of, this guy's got a hot hand. Do I keep playing him? I think he's a little slow. I think he kind of sticks to, maybe who he trusts, or maybe in terms of the organization, who is, I don't know, higher on the depth chart. I don't think we really have depth charts in baseball, but kind of to that effect. I definitely think he's a little slow doing that, but I think John Schneider is I don't know. He's a product of his kind of career, right? And where he's a manager in the big leagues. He's a first time manager, right? This guy wants to keep his job, right? At the end of the day, the players don't employ John Schneider. Do you know what I mean? Like he he's a part of this, whatever organizational plan. And why did he pull out Barrios last year? Because you know why? He doesn't want to ride the buses in the minor leagues anymore, right? Like at the end of the day, that's what the organization wanted to do, and he carried it out. It was it the right move at the time? No, I don't think it was, and I won't ever agree it was. But John Schneider, I think that's kind of where he is and kind of where he's caught is he needs to kind of once he has some stripes, he'll be able to be a little bit more you know, free and easy, right? In terms of the decision he makes. If we talk about the uh, the World Series last year, Bruce Bochy, right? This he didn't care about analytics. He doesn't care about it at all, right? And he understands that when you get to the playoffs, you have to make decisions. You have to use your eyes and use your intuitions and your instincts and everything that comes with being someone who's been in the game for as long as he has to make decisions, right? Not, pull out the spreadsheet and, understand that this is how over the course of 162 games, this is what happened, right? And so I think John Schneider will get there. Will he get there in a Blue Jays uniform? I kind of doubt it, to be honest. I think John Schneider, whatever happens with him, I think he'll surface with another team because I think he's the winningest manager in Blue Jays history in terms of percentage wise, and I don't even think it's close. So like I do think the guy has some chops, and I think he's learned the game coming up through all of the minor leagues. And I don't know. Some people hate him. Some people put out clown memes and whatever. That won't be me. I do think John Schneider is an asset to this team, and we'll keep an eye on see if he continues to grow as a manager throughout the year.
And I agree with you. I think that he's good, or he's the manager that this team needs. To be honest, I think I don't know if there could be somebody doing much better, but when it comes to the sort of play, let's call it spreadsheets versus gut, right? I think there's a place for both of those things. I think the decision to pull Barrios, to bring in Kikuchi, to force the Twins to take the lefties out and force their hand, it's a smart move on paper. It probably would have been a good move had Barrios been, maybe struggling a bit more, right? But yeah, you got to look in the moment. You got to see what's happening. You say, you know what? I know that was the plan, but Barrios is shoving tonight, and I'm going to leave him in there. And I'll take my licks behind the scenes, but at least the team will be, will have my back. At least, Bo Bichette and Barrios and, the guys that, matter to this team will say, you know what, you did the right thing. And that's a little, another point of it is the communication that they need to do, right? If Bo Bichette and the rest of the team knows, and the reason I mentioned Bo Bichette is because he's kind of seemed to be a little bit perturbed along with Whit Merrifield in some comments post game. But if you communicate to them, okay, this was the plan, and then when it happens, they're not as surprised. Or if it doesn't happen, they go, oh, okay, I see why it didn't happen, right? They can think along with you. But if they're surprised by everything, man, that's a bad look on both ends.
We're talking, of course, we're going back to this Barrios decision that I think a lot of Blue Jays fans are gonna not. That one stings, right? And there's a lot to that. But if we want to take on the flip side, over the course of 162 games, in game 140, if they're making a play because their numbers over the course of the season have led them to think this, like I'm totally okay with that. The problem is like when you have to win one game, right? And that's why I think that's what people were upset about. I don't particularly understand people who get really upset about like, why did you bring in Tim Mesa? In the ninth, it was a game that meant nothing. He could come in the next time or whatever, right? And it's like, you know what, man? Like, it doesn't fucking matter, right? Just like let it go. Let's move on to game number two. I don't know. Dustin, when the Jays play the Yanks, I feel like there's always a lot of talking points. I don't know why that is, but always a lot of talking points. Game number two was a 9-8 loss. Kevin Gausman started, and Dustin, I did text you because of course the Jays win in game number one. Kevin Gausman starting in game number two, and it just seemed to be kind of laid out in front of the Jays that like here's a series win that you can grab and run with. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, you think you score 8 runs, Gosman on the bump. That's that's 99% of the time going to be a win. Unfortunately, Gosman just didn't have it. His fastball was like at 91. Like that, he's usually hitting 95, 96, something like that. So to be 4 mph down from where he's expecting, he's probably frustrated. Frustration leads to lack of command as well. Whatever the case was, I think there was some question: was he hurt? What's going on? Didn't seem like he was hurt. I know that after the game, Hazel May asked him, what was going on, and he said he thinks it was the cold weather. Is that an excuse? I don't know. I think he just didn't have it. This is his, realistically his like third actual competitive game that he's pitched since, the start of spring training. He didn't really have a good full spring. I was a little bit worried about it, but I didn't expect this. Not at all.
Well, his velocity definitely seemed to increase, I guess, as he pitched. And Dustin, I do think at first I was like, the cold? Like, maybe? Okay. But there's actually an article on MLB.com right now from Keegan Matheson. And apparently last year, April 6th, a year to the day, he actually was pitching against the Kansas City Royals. Same thing. Velocity was way down. And in that one, I think he pitched like 6 scoreless innings. Of course, it's the Kansas City Royals, not the New York Yankees. But I'm gonna file this one away as this is probably more related to the cold weather. And you know what? When you don't locate your pitches against Aaron Judge and co., you're gonna get hammered. All right, I want to move on to something that had me pretty hot under the collar. The catcher interference call. Dustin, did you see this? And can you tell me your feelings on it?
I didn't see this one live. I had to run some errands during the game, but I did catch some of the clips and some of the controversy. It is a little bit odd to me that you can hit a catcher's glove after he catches it, and that's supposed to be catcher's interference. I know that the rule, is a little bit vague. Basically, that if any catcher or fielder interferes with the batter at any point during the pitch. But any point during the pitch, like when is the pitch complete? Like once it's in the glove, right? Like you'd think that, well, okay, at any third strike, just swing and try and hit the glove. I don't know if you can do that in the moment. I don't know if that's realistic, but it just seems like a weird situation. And I would have thought that upon review, because they went to a review, I would have thought that would have been overturned.
I think the problem lies in the fact that it's ambiguous, and you did quote word for word the actual I guess rule, and I was nodding my head along to you because the key point for me is that when is a pitch complete? It's complete when it gets to when it's closed. So not just when it hits the catcher's mitt. Like catcher has to the ball has to hit the mitt and close. That's a pitch. Like to me, there's no further action beyond that for the requirement for it to be a pitch. And in the moment, I get why Anthony Volpe kind of like reacted like he did, because I don't know if he really quite expected the catcher's mitt to be there. Um, but I thought it was complete bullshit. And that Anthony Volpe, of course, ends up on base, and it just continues an inning that really shouldn't have been. It should have been over. And I don't know. The Joe Siddle before today's game was talking about. So I think the ruling. So when you're talking about a batter interference, so a batter that interferes with the catcher trying to throw a runner out, it's a bit more clear in terms of the like the verbiage, I guess. And I'm hoping baseball will look at this, because it I don't know. It made no sense at all that. And I get, it was kind of like a bang bang thing. The ball hits the glove, and then Volpe taps Servant's glove with his bat, but it wasn't in the process of swinging at all. That it's not like he reached out and in the process of swinging, the bat hit the glove. If that was the case, Servant probably would have broke his hand if that actually happened.
Yeah, I doubt that baseball is gonna look at this, unless it starts happening where batters actually do start intentionally hitting catcher's gloves, seemingly intentionally doing it. Then they'll look at it. The rarity with which this actual situation happens is probably just not worth their time. And probably 90% of the time that a bat makes contact with a glove is actual catcher's interference, because the batter's trying to swing at the ball and make contact out in front of the plate, not in the glove, right? So you would expect that when the swing path of the bat comes around and is in a position to make contact with the glove, that's the ball's not in the glove. So I don't know. This probably doesn't happen a whole lot. They're not going to look at it. It is what it is. It's BS and a little bit of Yankees luck. I don't know.
Well, let's move on. I want to talk about the ninth inning a little bit here. So Jays go into this ninth inning down 9-5, and basically, I had texted you like, well, at least they're making it interesting. They definitely made it more than interesting, because we have a Justin Turner. Justin Turner leads off with a single. Vogelback walks. Clement hits into a fielder's choice, advancing the runners. Davis Schneider clubs a RBI double. Kirk hit into a fielder's choice RBI. Biggio pinch hits and hits an RBI single of his own. And then George Springer steps to the plate and strikes out on 3 fucking pitches, Dustin. Like that inning was so good. And like you know what? If Springer did anything but that, I would have like, oh, okay, this team has some fight in it, and it did. But we're talking about our leadoff hitter coming to the plate in a key scenario, and he could essentially win the game, and he strikes out. He was swinging at pitches he should not have swung at.
Yeah, 2 of the exact same sliders out in the bottom corner, just
Brutal, like absolutely brutal. And this to me, this is what's so frustrating about the Jays is George Springer, highest paid player on the team, and goes down like that, and the game was in the offing, right? Like it was there for you to win. And don't get me wrong, he could have put a charge on a ball and lined it straight to the third baseman, and the game's over. But come on, man, don't go down like that.
yeah, absolutely. It's just so anticlimactic. Like I said, it was out during the middle of the game. It came back, I think, around the 7th. I saw Vladdy's home run and watched the team basically come back, and which I think was a positive. In and of itself, is that although they didn't come back to win, they did come back in a game that they were at one point like 9-2 or 9-1. So I mean that's impressive in and of itself, and that comeback came in pretty much between the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. That was exciting. It was good, but yeah, it was just such a like heart drop moment to see Springer strike out there, just the way he struck out, just non-competitive, just unserious at bat in a moment where we need. That's what we signed Springer to do, is to be the guy in that moment, to even just a single to keep the game going, and put more pressure on this pitcher, make them go to the pen and put another guy in there, whatever the case may be. It's just so deflating.
Well, and I think you talked about it, uncompetitive at bat, and that during the Houston series, and probably even over 162 games last year, that was what we were getting every game, right? And I think one of the things of the Tampa series we talked about, where most players were looking good, maybe aside of Kevin Kiermaier, but um, most players were looking good. And you know what? Even when guys weren't getting hits, they were having, you know, productive at bats, or at bats where they were seeing a lot of pitches. Like it seemed like some positive progress was going on, and that's all great. But if one of your key guys isn't gonna, seemingly buy into that as well, I don't know. Like I just don't know what to say. It was deflating, but I think it's deflating because of who it is, how it happened, and it's just this same issue constantly, right? Really, for the Jays to be better this season, more competitive at bats is how they're going to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's why Justin Turner's there. I think that's what we're asking from Vladdy. We're seeing a little bit more of it. Something I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you saw it, but in the seventh, Vladdy hit a opposite field home run. He hasn't been swinging the bat well, overall, but he's been putting together, the occasional good at bat. I think that I think it was the first game of the New York series, he struck out to end the game, but the at bat was pretty, long, and it was during his at bat that the wild pitches happen. So I think he's having the occasional bright spots, and you can kind of see it coming back. And I'm hoping that he's coming back. But one of the things that I thought was funny on Twitter this morning, there's a Twitter account talking baseball, and it's sort of a side account for the Talking Yanks guys, the John Boy Media guys. And so they're Yankees fans. And the tweet was like showing a video of Vladdy hitting that home run. At the time, the home run made it 9-3. And he does his normal celebration. He rounds second base. He does a little skip between second and third. He goes shh, and he puts his finger to his lips as kind of his handshake / celebration with the third base coach. And then he does his normal point to the sky, whatever, before he touches home plate. Anyways, they showed this video, and they're like, Vladdy shushes the Yankees crowd in a 9-3 game. And I just, to me, this is probably why the Yankees fans themselves, and the way that they think, they're like, everything is about them. It's like, don't you know that Vladdy does that shush thing every time he hits a home run? Doesn't matter whether they're losing 9-1 or they're winning. It doesn't matter, what the situation is. That's his celebration with the third base coach. Hell, he's on the cover of MLB The Show 24 doing that thing. It's in the ads for that thing. Like, why would you think that he's shushing the Yankees crowd there? And if he is shushing the Yankees crowd, he's shushing every crowd every time that he does that. Like, it's just, I think that's why you asked earlier, like, why do we have so many talking points with the Yanks series? It's because, like, I don't know. It's just the way that the Yanks fans kind of talk about things, or I don't know. It's just something about the Yankees that gets everybody's juices running.
Watching the games this weekend, I definitely It's like, oh, like I want the obviously I want the Jays to be better, but you know what why I want the Jays to be better? I want them to beat the fucking Yankees, right? Because you just look at the fans and they're
Absolutely.
like, they're jeering Springer in right field or doing this or they're just being Yankees fans, right? And I don't know. I know, I'm sure that Major League Baseball will tell us that the Yankees being good is probably overall better for the game. There's more viewers and whatnot. I don't give a shit. Um, for me, if like the Yankees need to be shit and they need to be embarrassed. I want them like running away with their tail between the legs. And I think that's part of frustrations from this weekend is just I don't think the Jays have that team. Game number 3, we have an 8-3 loss, and felt like similarly to game number 2, like there was, the Jays are getting some hits, they're getting some runners on, not really cashing guys in. Um, but really the key swing of the game was a Giancarlo Stanton grand slam. And
Yeah.
Giancarlo Stanton, for everything that he's done in his career, some of the highest exit velocities the game has ever seen. Like he just mashes the ball, but this at his point where he's at his career, you cannot let Giancarlo Stanton beat you like this. You just can't. And I decided I would look up because since Giancarlo Stanton has joined the Yankees, he has not really been good. And 2023, he actually had a negative zero point 0.8 negative WAR. Okay, he had one. So when he joined the Yankees in 2018, he had a 4.4 WAR. Since then, he's had 4 seasons with less than one WAR. Uh, 2021, he did have a 3.1 WAR, but pretty much every other season has been less. Like he's basically an average player at this point in his career. But when he gets a hold of one, he sends it over the fence, and I really felt that this is something. Bowden Francis only his second major league start, but this is a mistake you cannot make in the major leagues.
Yeah. There's something funny I wanted to say about that third inning, and it kind of speaks to that. You know, both half of those innings were kind of mirror in a weird kind of copy innings. So the Jays, they get a couple outs and then Springer lines a single. I think Vladimir was hit by pitch and Bo walked. And then Alejandro Kirk walks with the bases loaded. So the pitcher's not having a good time. He's struggling. Bases loaded, 2 out. Kevin Biggio steps up. And, look, Kevin did what he did. He had a decent at bat, but he struck out looking, and you just can't do that. We go to the third, similar kind of situation happens on the opposite side of the ball, right? There's a couple outs. I think there's a walk and then a couple outs. Juan Soto singles. Aaron Judge walks, and now it's like bases loaded. And then Anthony Rizzo walks with the bases loaded, scores a run. Now it's tied. And then with 2 out, bases loaded, Giancarlo Stanton comes up and, instead of striking out like Kevin Biggio did, he hits a grand slam. And that's like that inning right there just was like, to me, kind of emblematic of the difference between these two teams right now is that when, the big opportunity to put a team away, like if Kevin Biggio hits a grand slam there, it's a different game, right? That the bottom of that third doesn't happen like that probably. So I don't know. It just kind of felt like we need to be that team where when the bases are loaded, even if there's 2 outs, we get singles, we hit home runs, and we take advantage of that opportunity.
Well, I definitely agree that shows essentially the difference between the Yankees and the Blue Jays. The top of that Yankees order definitely has some guys that can really put the bat on the ball. I wasn't scared by the Yankees. Do you know what I mean? Like they didn't really scare me this weekend. I was disappointed that we lost to them. But every game, well, maybe aside of the first game, but game number 2 and 3, the Jays had, you know, Jays had runners on. They just couldn't really quite get the wheels turning the same way that the Yankees did.